Hi, everybody. It's Liam. Before we jump into this week's episode, we wanted to point you in the direction of justiceforbrianna.org. This is a website that you can visit to sign petitions, to get some phone numbers, and to donate to the family of Breonna Taylor, who was murdered by police. In the past few weeks, we've heard the names Tony McDade, Dominique Files, and Rhea Milton. Tony McDade was murdered by the police. Dominique Files and Rhea Milton were found last week murdered. To support transgender Black life, please visit theokraproject.com. There's lots of useful ways you can contribute there. Thank you. We hope you enjoy this week's episode. I'm Liam Billingham.
I'm George Fragopoulos.
I'm Matthew Krol.
Yes!
And this is the
Nailed it.
other podcast about movies.
Nice, Liam.
Thank you.
Got me.
Got you.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Oeuvre Busters. Here we are. Woo.
Matt, what's
Matt.
going on?
You know, just living the bat dream. It took all of my, I don't know, internal energy to not, instead of saying my name, just go, and I'm Batman. Like
It's
in
hard.
this,
It's really hard.
yeah. But I did it.
When we did the Dark Knight Rises podcast, I would just be like, the fire rises.
It was great. Yeah, it was great listening to Liam just do that for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It was
I imagine.
amazing.
I mean, I'll
Well,
do it right now if you just want.
Please
You
do.
can all
Please
listen.
do. Oh my God, do the whole episode. Do the whole episode that way. Lego Batman.
You merely adopted the brick. I don't know. I got nothing. No, I am very excited.
Invented it.
I have been trying to play catch up with your bat, the bat oeuvre that you have continually been busting.
I'm Batman.
And busting does make me feel good. So
should do
the
that
most
next.
recent one, I'm trying to remember. You've been going sort of chronologically, not counting 66. You did
66,
that one, but
we
that
jump
doesn't-
backwards, correct.
Yeah. You just did what? Bats v Soups, right?
Bat v Soup's Dawn of IP. Yes, we
Yes.
did. And then we have our Justice League episode. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you holding up in the quarantine times?
I'm okay. It's fine. Me and my cat Zoe have hunkered down. I've been saying to people, I don't know if either of you were very much into board games or not.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah. George, what about you?
I am not particularly, but I don't have anything against board games.
Right.
But
Fuck
there's
board games.
There's a complicated, weird fuck board game.
I guess now's a good time to play them online, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a game that came out a few years back called Gloomhaven. And
that's
it's
a good name.
hyper expensive. It's £18, and you
Whoa.
can only play it once. It's got like
Whoa.
stickers and blind boxes and like a bunch of stuff. And now in month 2.5 or whatever of quarantine, I've
It's on
reached
Steam.
quarantine level Gloomhaven, and now I have ordered said thing, and I'm going to try to split it up amongst my small quarantine of friends I have, and see if we can do that because time is meaningless.
I'm on Steam right now, and I'm looking at Gloomhaven, and it sounds so good.
Well, yeah.
I'm super into this.
So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at mentally, physically, emotionally, obviously. And some other stuff is going on right now that I'm sure we'll touch on as we roll on through. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you for asking.
Well, we're glad, and I think there's definitely, whenever you're talking about Batman, there's room to talk about Law and Order,
Yeah.
which is on everybody's mind right now. Let me in the movie, of course, that we're talking about, George, what movie are we talking about?
We're talking about Lego Batman from 2017, but Liam, did we introduce Matt?
I'm going to do it
officially?
right now, George. I'm going to do it.
Let's do it.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just trying to
Matthew
keep us
Krol
on point.
is a producer, voice actor, and currently the showrunner and narrator for the YouTube channel Extra Credits, which last time I checked had 2.3 million subscribers, which is about the number of people that listen to this podcast. He's also
Give or take a few million.
give or take 2.329 million.
3 million, yeah.
He's also the less educated but more handsome, in your face, Shahir, half of the erroneously titled podcast, The Only Podcast About Movies. Matt, we're happy to have you here, and I won't tell Shahir you said that.
No,
but
tell him
true.
that.
I'm gonna text him.
Yeah, texting him right now.
In the small bit that I wrote, that I specifically call that out because I mean he knows, but it's fun to remind him. I think.
And also being tall doesn't make you handsome. Okay, Shahir, being tall doesn't make you handsome.
Yeah, I mean, technically, now look, if we were to say who has better hair, Shahir does. Who is taller? Shahir is. Who, again, more educated? Shahir is. But I think handsomeness is more...
your area.
Actually, yeah, and also there's a little bit of internal there too. Like you can exude handsomeness without being classically handsome. Like I don't know, Shahir Dowd is.
That's what
There's
we
variables,
do. That's
of
what
course,
we
yeah.
do. We just exude handsome. We don't actually possess it.
I'm seeing that right now. Zoom is fantastic to display handsomeness.
The best part
That's just
about
because
that
I've
is
like this soft filter on.
I then laugh and I see the giant gap in the top of my teeth, and I'm like, ooh. George, why don't you tell us what happens in Lego Batman?
I would be thrilled to, Liam. So Lego Batman begins with another attempt by the Joker, as played by Zach Galifianakis, as voiced by Zach Galifianakis, to destroy Gotham City. The Joker is, of course, foiled, of course, by Batman, voiced by Will Arnett. And Batman tells the Joker in a rather emotional showdown that he actually doesn't need him or have really any feelings for him, and that their constant kind of tangles and antagonisms mean very little to him. This leads obviously to a new plot by the Joker to kind of like get Batman's attention and to show him how important he is in his life. Meanwhile, Commissioner Gordon is retiring, and his daughter Barbara Gordon.
I just want to pause and notice that
Rosario Dawson.
you wrote Barbar. You wrote Barbar Gordon, which
Barbar,
makes me think about the elephant
yeah.
Barbar.
Well, they're close, so you can call her, Barbar, yeah.
Barbar, I love
It's a
you.
really weird mingling of intellectual properties here. We have Barbar the elephant and Batman.
Barbar.
We should probably maybe talk about that. So Barbara Gordon, as voiced by Rosario Dawson, becomes the new commissioner of Gotham City. Bruce Wayne, Batman, kind of like falls in love with her. Apparently, also, it's like a kind of like royalty, a generational title. So commissioner of Gotham City just gets passed from one generation to another. It's at this moment also that Bruce Wayne accidentally adopts Dick Grayson, voiced by Michael Cera, who of course is an orphan looking for a father.
And Scott Pilgrim.
Which I did not see. Maybe we could talk about it. Hilarity ensues. Hilarity actually ensues from the very, very beginning of this film. There's an interesting kind of overlap with the Phantom Zone from the Superman cinematic and comic book universe. Joker gets exiled to it, where he kind of plans his new plot against Gotham and Batman. There's a couple of cameos by Superman and the rest of the Justice League. And basically the rest of the film is Batman trying to, again, get in touch with his feelings and to figure out what family is. And eventually he defeats the Joker again. Well, actually, like, interestingly enough, they kind of almost like team up, but we could talk about that.
They do team up.
Anyway, Batman discovers what the meaning of family is.
Aww.
The end. And also Alfred is voiced by Ray Fiennes.
I think the meaning of family is having a shared HBO Max account. Is what I
was gonna say podcasting. Podcasting with your bros.
Listen, podcasting does become a familial experience. And then you know what's nice about it? And then every once in a while we can all go across everyone's shows, be guests, etc.
Yes.
And then it's like minor family reunions where you specifically only invite one person each time or two people or whatever. You can basically, podcasting is the family you can choose.
Well, listen, we
Exactly.
don't invite tall, freakish looking guys to our podcast.
Whoa, all
okay?
right.
It's funny too. I was thinking about your
He's like the
podcast
nicest
relationship.
guy.
He's the nicest guy. I was thinking about your podcast relationship to ours, and we're like, we're not exactly sister podcasts. We're not that close, but maybe like kissing first cousins.
I mean, sure. If that's where we want to go.
George
wow,
Fragopoulos
my brain
does not
went to
speak
this
for
place
podcast.
called Kokomo.
Welcome to Kissing Cousins.
That's the sister
my side
podcast
podcast.
to both our podcasts.
Yeah, we should do it. We record an episode once a year, and it's always about incest. The Lego Batman movie is directed by Chris McKay of the Lego Movie. It was written by Seth Graham Smith, who wrote, talk about IP craziness, the It movie. He wrote Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies book. Chris McKenna, who worked on Spider-Man, I believe Homecoming, and Ant-Man and the Wasp, Eric Summers, Jared Stern, and John Whittington. It was produced by Dan Lin, Roy Lee, and most notably Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who, if I remember correctly, produced Enter the Spider-Verse, which I think is one of the best superhero movies ever. The voice cast, some have already mentioned, but we'll bring it up again. Will Arnett as Batman/Bruce Wayne, Zach Galifianakis as the Joker, Michael Cera as Dick Grayson/Robin, Rosario Dawson as Barbar Gordon, Ray Fiennes as Alfred Pennyworth. I can't believe they got Ray Fiennes to play Alfred, and it was in a fucking Lego movie. Jenny Slate as Harley Quinn, Hector Elizondo as Commissioner James Gordon, and my favorite, there's a lot of like crazy cameo casting in this, but I had to note that Billy D. Williams plays Two-Face because it's such a great callback to 1989 Batman. This cast in this movie is ridiculous. Conan O'Brien is in this movie. O'Brien.
Is he who is he? He's one of the minor villains, right? Or
he's Riddler.
Riddler. Yeah.
He like shows up and cackles. And like I think Conan O'Brien would be a pretty sweet Riddler. In I think Conan O'Brien could play Riddler, except the whole time we'd be like Riddler. Conan. Oof, he's so tall. This film was rushed into production after the success of the Lego Movie and the popularity of Lego Batman. They did the whole thing in 2.5 years, from I believe like green light to release, which is insane.
It's nuts.
And a quick quote that I thought would be an interesting way to talk about this was director Chris McKay saying, "I basically pitched the movie to the studio and said that I wanted to make Jerry Maguire as directed by Michael Mann with a lot of jokes in it, and they kind of let me run with that." I think that's a good starting place to talk from. What'd you guys think? Matt, had you seen this before?
Oh yes, very much so. I think we might. Yeah, we did. We did an episode on this when it first came out.
Oh shit!
But I had not watched it, and I had it on Blu-ray, and then I watched it once after that, and then so this is the third time I've watched this film. And you know, it's funny because I was talking with some people saying that I was going to be on the show and that I was going to be rewatching Lego Batman, and everyone who had seen the film was like, "Fuck yeah!" Everyone who had not seen the film was like, "Oh, like really?" And I was like, "You don't fucking know." Like it's this weird thing because people even think, and I'll die on this hill, I think. People like or dislike the Lego Movie. I feel like overall it's gotten a positive response, but there are people that are just like, I'm not into it, right? I think even those people would enjoy Lego Batman for reasons I'll get into a little bit later. But there's an overall joy to this film that I think it's firing on every cylinder, and it's working on like 5 or 6 levels that a lot of animated films do like 1 or 2 things. So like some for the kids, some for the adults. But this is like, even down to the Billy D. Williams cameo as Two-Face. Yeah. Like it's firing on a trillion cylinders, even down to like my B-movie love affairs with stuff like Jim Cotta. Like, there's 2 Jim Cotta references in this film.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. Yeah, there's 2 Jim Cotta references.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. I love this film. I was so psyched when you guys invited me on to talk about it. So I'm ready.
George,
I had a lot of fun watching. This is the first Lego movie I think I've seen, actually. Although, like, obviously, like, I'm aware of like the franchise in general, and I've heard
Lego.
I know
Lego.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. I've heard of them. I can't wait. I can't wait for the Playmobil film.
The Duplo film.
We have Duplos.
Can't fucking wait. I just had a great time watching this. I think I had issues. I had certain kind of reservations. I think similar to what reservations that you had, Liam, about maybe certain aspects of it being a little bit kind of like cliched and a little bit kind of predictable. But this, especially coming from the Snyder films and how fucking serious those films are, this film was like such a breath of fresh air. And again, because I hadn't seen any of the other Lego films, the animation and the visual dynamic of this like really kind of like captivated me and blew me away. So I just really had like a really fun time watching this. And also, I think also considering what's happening in quarantine, also was like, wow, I kind of just needed a fun, like, silly film to like get me out of my head for 2 hours. Although there were also things about this film that like really resonated, which maybe we'll talk about, and kind of really made me think about certain other things that are happening right now in America, in Minneapolis. But we could maybe talk about those things in a bit more detail. What about you, Liam?
I've gone back and forth. So I watched the Lego Movie. Excuse me. I watched
You're getting all emotional. It's okay. You could
take your time.
Cry in the podcast.
Like really,
Yeah,
just like
Process
absorb
it.
the moment about how you felt internally, emotionally, esoterically when you first saw that first Lego movie.
I watched the first Lego movie on a plane. Remember planes? And
No.
yeah, I know. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I think my favorite thing about the original Lego movie was when it stops being a Lego movie and becomes a real world movie, because it like attains a whole other level of resonance. I watched this movie in 2 sittings because of my life. And the first 30 minutes, I was like, wow, this is fucking amazing. And then I watched the rest later and I was less into it. But that was like 36 hours ago, and hearing you guys talk about it and also thinking about it, I think I like it more than the thoughts, the things that I wrote down would imply. I also think that I probably, and I think George can speak to this, I don't recommend watching every Batman movie in a row over and like a shortened period of time, because it makes you a little less able to just absorb and enjoy the experience of engaging.
Yeah, leave that to the
Batman.
professionals.
Leave it to the professional. Leave it to the real. But I think that this movie has some of the. I would say that this is like a top 3 to 5 Batman movie. And I think it's in some ways the most subversive.
I'm gonna
and
hot
I think
take.
that's exciting.
Hot take. I think this, in the year of some Lord 2020, is the best Batman movie.
Whoa. That is
No, let's hear some. If you can sort of improvise in the moment, could you rank maybe your top 3 or 4 Batman movies?
Going in this order, say that is the top, because the one that sort of ping pongs back and forth for me for top is Batman Returns. I think it's, for me personally, is sort of the right mix of when I saw it as a kid, so there's the nostalgia, but you go back and watch it and it's much darker than you remember, and it's also kind of like, it's dark, but it's still fun because it's Batman, not like Snyderverse dark because darkness is dark and also dark. So like, that's sort of where I sort of land on.
Dark.
Yeah, all great movies start in black. And then probably, and again, milder hot take, I think Batman Begins is my next one on number 3, followed by Dark Knight. I really, and that wasn't true for a long time, but I really like, Batman Begins was the first like time when I was like, oh, this can be reinvented. And while I will probably say that on a standalone, like, if you rank all of the imaginary points that you can rank movies on, like, yeah, The Dark Knight is a more grand, impressive film and therefore could be considered better. It's also can do that because of the work that Begins did. Mm-hmm. Like, so I just, when I watched Begins, I was like, holy crap, they put Batman in the real world. They put Batman in the real world, and they made it make as much sense as it possibly could. And that film has flaws too, but I think that's my order. I think currently Lego Batman number 1, Batman Returns number 2, Batman Begins number 3, Dark Knight down.
So that's okay. So you think it's your favorite? Is it because of the humor, or is it the tone? Is there something specific that elevates it for you?
And it's interesting because I do think, personally, I think that like favorite lists or things that are sort of tied to like a specific human being's preferences should be ever fluid, because we are always changing as people. And again, I think probably close to the way I was feeling around 2019, maybe a little earlier to now, does make this feel like it's something that takes something I love and doesn't try to wrap it in something else I don't like, and then gives me something in addition that I didn't know I wanted. For instance, Batman is kind of a dumb concept. It is. Yeah. It's inherently silly. The 60s knew that. The comic books, so that's sort of in its own world. I love that they were able to transform it into something more serious and somewhat grounded in cinematic reality for Batman and Batman Returns. I love even drenching it in neon and making it silly in a weird sort of bad way when it came to Forever and Robin. Like, and then when they redid it and like super grounded it in reality, which I think like, I feel like Zack Snyder and all those films kind of learned the wrong lesson from the Nolan trilogy, which was like, oh, make it grim. It's like, well, no, make it in reality, which is inherently grim. So like, so coming off of all of that, currently, Lego Batman does exactly what Batman does best, and no pun intended due to Lego, builds off of that through the different levels it works with, the meta humor, the stuff you can look and find if you need to dig, but also like throughout all of that, it's still probably, to be honest, the most emotionally resonant from a human perspective story that Batman has been on film. I am not talking about animated series, because if we're going there, and I know Mask of the Phantasm could have been on the original list, but I was just sort of sticking with I don't know why, because this is animated. Anyway, that is why. I feel like that is why, because of the tone and tenor of the day and what I'm looking for in a story, plus where I think Batman kind of works best now that I've seen it in a lot of different genres. I think this is the best way to do a Batman story, playing off the intrinsic ridiculousness of the character and having him learn something. I don't think there's been a Batman movie other than him learning he wants to be Batman where he's learned something.
Yeah, I think the first half hour of this film, I think, is really, I mean, and obviously, like, it builds, I think, to, like, an emotional level, too. So, like, it does kind of build towards something. But the take on this character for the first half hour, like, actually addresses things that the other films, like, do not address. And also, like, the fact that he admits constantly that he's, like, always angry. Yeah. Like, his anger, and obviously it's played for, like, humor, but it comes back over and over and over again, that this is, like, an angry fucking dude. And it's really interesting to see that addressed in a really kind of direct manner. Because, like, I think even in the Nolans, where obviously there's a lot of trauma there, and the character talks about it, and it's addressed. But, like, in the Nolan films, like, is anger ever brought up? Like, I don't think it is.
Anger's used as a tool in it. Like, he hones it for, for his ninja-esque self. Like, he uses it to instill fear in people, but he doesn't, like, the intrinsic anger that I don't think internal anger or seeing him, like, actually angry and not using it as a weapon is really too present. Sorry, Liam, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to say that I think this movie, to speak to that point, is because it's animated, and it's not animated in the more classical, traditional style of the TV show, has the ability to do things visually and that the films could never do. And I think that what I mean is that, like, one of the things that's interesting about this movie is that when it comes to the characters, there's absolutely no subtext. So, like, Will Arnett, who I think is an amazing Batman, I think he's, like, one of the best Batmans ever, can literally just say, like, I'm angry, I'm always angry. Like, he can do that, and we accept it because of, like, the medium that the way they've chosen to tell the story, which I think, you know, all of this is based on comic books. I don't like it when people say that something is, like, particularly comic booky or whatever the case is, but they are able to, in a sophisticated way, be very, like, plain and direct with what characters are feeling. And I think that, like, there's a lot of, you know, Nolan has this quality, I wouldn't say in his filmmaking, but in his storytelling, of, like, feeling a need to withhold a little bit. And so I think that, like, the quote unquote anger that you would feel from the character is just, it's hard to, like, one of the problems with the Nolan movies in some way is a lot of characters talking about how they feel, but you don't necessarily always see that on screen so clearly. But what I love about the style of this movie is they're able to, like, create visual images, like the photo of his parents next to the photo of his new family, that are, like, able to say things without having the character have to have, like, a subtle shift in the way he behaves or anything like that. The animation kind of allows for that.
And this might be the first one too, along with sort of Batman Bruce Wayne learning something, is also the thing that also, like, does address, outside of a fear toxin, the concept of fear, that what Batman is afraid of, rather than him just constantly using fear against criminals. Air quotes are all around in all of this. So, like, you know, I think does Alfred call it out in this film where he's like, "Oh, your greatest fear is losing a family," or something along those lines,
right?
Which is, being part of, your greatest fear is being part of a family again, and that's something that's like, here's this dude, granted in Will Arnett Lego block form, but like that has every advantage, all the money in the world, and gets to dress up in a Halloween costume and punch poor people, as I believe Barbara Gordon says at some point in
Oh, it's
in
so
this film.
good.
Yeah,
I can't. It's just like it's there in the movie.
I know. Like, you know, and the reason he's not doing anything but that and sort of focusing on this like rage and how awesome he is because he's literally afraid to let more people into his life because of the fact that something bad could happen to them. And now Batman comic books have dealt with that quite a bit. And I know in some of the other films there are hints of that. But I always feel like in the other Batman films, it's less an internal thing and more of used as like a reason for a secret identity.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, but here it's like laid out.
Well, it's also almost never essential to the plot too, in the way it is here, where like obviously here it's like essential to like what happens in the pretty much the entirety of the film.
Yeah. And it goes above it. I'm sorry if I'm just like spraying love all over this film, but it does really
Walk
get
with
me.
it.
Gross.
Ooh, get it off my film.
Love spray.
That sounds like something Condiment King would use. So the way that this movie does that, of course, it does it with the surrogate family that he builds, and he's keeping an emotional wall from keeping people that he cares about around him. Batman is also, and it's a major plot and solution in the film, is keeping an emotional distance from the people he hates.
Yeah.
Right.
And unpacking that in a child's movie about plastic bricks is nuts. Like, it's so smart, and it like this film has as many levels as you want it to have.
Well, I think what it does a little bit to that point is it kind of, and I don't think it does this in like an intentionally like fuck you way, but it sort of repudiates the self-seriousness of the Nolan ones and the Schneider-verse versions as well, because like, you know, one of the things that people thought was so kind of amazing in the original or in the one with the Dark Knight is when the Joker says like, you complete me, and like I have a feeling we're going to be doing this for a long time. Like there was that whole culture of that like being like, whoa, they went for it, whereas this movie just goes like, why don't you guys just admit that you're in love? Like there's like, if this were not a kids movie, it's a kids movie, but if it weren't, you'd want a line where like someone is like, why don't Batman and Joker just fuck? Like why don't they just get it over with?
There is one line like that, right? Like one or two lines in The Dark Knight, but that's
about them fucking.
No, not about them fucking, but about like where the Joker basically says something along the lines of, or like, I'm your opposite or something, or like you need me to justify your
definitely
existence.
there's definitely like
it's there, but it's not again like the central point of the film. I'm curious about why the Lego aesthetic in general.
Like why? Why use that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like a very interesting like intellectual property to turn into a film, and I think like while I was watching this, I was like, and obviously I realized that this isn't the first one. So again, like the first one was 2014, I believe.
Yep.
But just I was just kind of curious about like what is it that it does, and is it primarily about nostalgia? So is it because it works on two levels? Is it because it works on the level of nostalgia for parents of like, oh, I grew up playing with these, and does it work on the level of, let's say, for the primary audience, obviously being kids, of being like, oh, okay, I still play with these things, so that there's like this kind of two-sided attachment to this intellectual property.
I think all animated, merchandising, and also
but I mean, but again, besides though, I mean, yes, I mean, obviously like merchandising to sell more shit, but I also wanted to try to think about it beyond that.
Well, like on that point, this is one of those rare, wondrous times that blind corporate want lines up with a product that also is meaningful on not only a narrative level, but on a, I guess, contextual level based around two different childhood properties that most people that go see this film that are on the older side of things will remember. One of which has a very happy tactile sort of built-in memory base that you'll go into, and the other one, something that's been flooded in pop culture for literally as long as I've been alive. So so when you have that convergence, it's rare, but the reasons why the film is made and in the aesthetic that it is, they decided, and it feels like because it was such a quick turnaround time, they knew that was the reason why it was being made going in, but really smart, talented people who gave a shit decided, and also people that love both Batman and Lego came together, industry professionals, to go in this wheelhouse of, yes, we understand we need to get this product out by this time because there's this many toys coming out and maybe Christmas. And just said, okay, and now we're going to work in that space and we're going to churn out something special. I think it's amazing when that can work out. And
also, and I think to your point, that in a weird way, like we talk about the politics being good or bad, this has some of the best politics in a Batman movie, because I feel like McKay and the team, and I think that like Phil Lord and Chris Miller and the whole team had the ability to go like, we still have to honor the like subversive place that a lot of this work that we make comes from. I mean, Chris McKay's first job was on Robot Chicken, so like he's pretty aware of like the kind of comedy he can make, and I think that like the decision in the original to attach the Lego kind of to like a child's trauma from having like a neglectful parent is like a really, really smart thing that movie does. At least that's how I read the ending of it. And it does something similar with the Bruce Wayne character. Like it is sort of, to your point, it's amazing that you were able to get like a fairly it's a big studio property, but one with things like Batman saying very clearly he doesn't pay his taxes. Yeah. And other stuff.
Singing that he doesn't pay his taxes.
And also being like, it can satisfy two things. Little boys can see the like bat tank and all the stuff that they see and think it's really cool, and adults can watch it and be like, Jesus Christ, like this is the most this is like we're supposed to take seriously the militarization and the Nolan Batman and think it's like really cool as adults, but when it's shown this way in this one, at least I was like, oh my God, especially with what's going on in the United States this week watching it. But you're like, it is for adults, I think, that are paying attention. It kind of reveals, sort of to your point, Matt, how ridiculous Batman is and how ridiculous the culture has like pushed him into like us needing to take him, quote unquote, seriously.
I even think too, this is a film that actually can portray to children the negative aspects of Batman. On the other films, no matter which versions we're talking about, whenever it gets dark or sort of sad, it's just a slow scene of a rich dude in a mansion or in a tricky situation or whatever, and it's just like a slow brooding moment with a stand, and you see the bat signal and you're like, yeah, that's emotional, or it's, whatever, he's working through stuff in those particular moments. What kids can probably understand better for the sort of negative sides of Batman is the loneliness and the boredom, because nothing's worse to a kid, as far as I can remember, than being bored. And again, that's a real privilegey sort of thing to say. But like, I remember in my childhood, like that was like when I didn't understand what emotions were and I was a tiny, tiny human. Like when I was bored or alone, I knew something was like, or me not being able to deal with that or whatever, it was kind of like something was wrong or I didn't like that. So this movie's showing that the negative aspects of Batman and how he acts causes him to be bored a lot and alone a lot. And the things that help him through his stuff is when he actively gets out of his own way to take steps to have people around him. Like, I think that's a really good message for kids that they can easily understand while also enjoying the tank and the growler, the crawler, whatever he master builded, the cat looking thing. Yeah.
Right. Totally. How did you guys feel? So like, I think that one thing we've hit at is the idea of like, we see him as lonely at the beginning of the film. We see him as bored at the beginning of the film. I don't know if you guys thought of this at all, but the scene when he's alone and he's like having his dinner, the lobster thermidor heated up and whatever, made me think a lot about David Fincher's The Game, which is another movie that has a scene early on where we see Michael Douglas like alone in his house on his birthday because he has like all the money in the world and he's like a piece of shit. And one thing that The Game does that the Lego Batman movie does is the arc of the character is to basically like take his sort of self-absorbed, lonely, and somewhat angry existence and become like more of a people person, which like in the David Fincher movie, which I love that movie. I think it's really good. I think if I watched it now, I'd be a little bit like, I don't know if I really feel, I don't think you're supposed to feel bad for the millionaire at the beginning of the movie, but maybe you are. Whereas I feel like this movie's, and I understand it's why it's going where it's going, but my frustration with the movie is twofold, and I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think that the let's call it like intellectual propertyification of the movie really distracts, even though it is Lego for me, because I spent the whole time thinking about like the fact that I was watching a bunch of different kids' toys be brought together for a movie, which frustrated me with this, and it frustrated me in the Scoob movie as well. But the other thing is that I think by the end the status is sort of quo with Batman. Like, he's become a better person, but nothing has really changed about the character and his, like, I don't know. Nothing about the character has really changed. He's just become like, oh, I'm a people person again. And I think that sort of traditional decision isn't as interesting as George put it, as leaning into him still being like an asshole and a lunatic. Like, as much as I understand why he gets better, I kind of don't like that he gets better. And I know that that's antithetical to what the movie's doing, but it bugs me a little bit.
Well, the truth, this is the sort of the dark side truth of that whole statement. As soon as Batman is mentally okay, he's not Batman anymore.
Totally, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the film sort of going that direction. And this it doesn't quit, but like that's kind of the arc this would be like there was a series of comics years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where it was Batman Inc., I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
And it was when Batman like literally was like, okay, you know what? Let's treat this like for lack of a better term, like a business, and like just hired out other Bat people and made like a vigilante force. And that's like the more grimdark DC comic book style sort of this, where this is more of like the friendly, like, we're all in this together, let's start a family, working with the police and doing all that stuff. Batman. The thing about Batman stories, and it's amazing that he's lasted as long as he has. Really, I mean, I guess this is a larger conversation, but the reason why superheroes last is, modern day mythology, and they're basically the replacements of like the, Greek and Roman gods in various cultures and things like that, even though they are run on a corporate timeline, yada, yada, yada. But Batman specifically
That was a whole episode of a podcast.
Yeah.
Sentences.
But Batman specifically feels like he has an expiration date. Like, his story should come to an end.
Right. It's
And
like the Nolan films.
We've just liked him so much that other than the Nolan films, they just never do. Every one of the first 4 Batman films ends with him running across the bat signal. Like,
right.
And he grieved for his family 4 times in those films. And like, I don't know. It's
the episodic nature of it. Like, Nolan is not going to make, it's just not in his DNA, I think, to be like, I'm going to make something that could continue on forever. Whereas, which is, a little bit absurd, because of course it's going to continue on forever, but I sort of see the intent. But it is a good point that at the end of it, if he's like, oh, I'm not angry anymore, then he's no longer Batman, which I think is an interesting thing to think about in terms of Batman and Bruce Wayne being the exact same person in this movie, which I think is one of the things that it does really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that funny line at the very end where like he takes his mask off in front of Dick Grayson. And he's like, "Oh, my 2 dads or my 1 dad."
Yeah.
It's so good. Michael Cera is great in this movie.
Yeah.
George, how'd you feel about the second half of this thing?
Yeah, I mean, again, like where you were saying, I think there's a lot of kind of conventional kind of tropes, or it takes us somewhere somewhat conventional. I agree with what Matt said, and I think like that, for example, would have been like an interesting turn. Like, what happens to the character, let's say, when he resolves all of these kind of traumatic issues that he might have, and how that would obviously kind of like lead to the end of
Batman,
the dual identity of like Batman is. I think the other kind of like issue that I had with it is like, why is it that we have to have like kind of this establishment of a conventional family? And so where the family gets kind of reconstituted, obviously. So like Batman's the dad, Batgirl or Batwoman
Barbar
is obviously the mom. Alfred is this kind of patriarchal, more so patriarchal, like grandfather figure. And obviously Dick Grayson's the child or the son. And that was like kind of the part that I kind of like took a little bit of issue with. That again, it's just like it leads us to this kind of somewhat conventional place in terms of the constitution of the family.
I have a few issues around that too. I feel like it's been nothing but a love fest so far. We could get into a little bit some of the negative things, and other than Steve Mnuchin being one of the executive producers of this film.
Is he a producer on this one?
He was an executive producer on the Lego Batman movie.
Oh, I missed that part.
He should be the villain.
Yeah. Also, might have been illegal depending on who you're talking about. Constitutional law
Oh, I'm
doesn't
sure
matter.
it was illegal.
Oh, that's right. 2017. This film. Yeah. God damn.
How
Same
young
year
we
as,
were.
Is this same year as Dawn of Justice?
I
It is,
It
right?
is, right?
Yeah,
Think
I think it's the
so.
same year. Yeah.
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 One of the other problems I had with this film was it not knowing. This seems kind of standard for a lot of Bat work. What to do with a female character? First, you have the Dreamweaver moment. It's not. They don't play Dreamweaver. I forget what song they play when he's.
Is it Dreamweaver?
Is it Dreamweaver? I feel like that's Wayne. Every time because of Wayne's
No, that's
World.
Wayne's
That's
World.
just
It's
where I
it's-
go.
Right. Ooh, Dreamweaver.
Ooh.
I had to sing. I haven't sang in a long time.
It's like I'm there. I believe you can get me through.
oh my
the
God, is that
night.
who sings Dreamweaver?
I don't know.
I'm gonna look it up.
Google, save us.
Vamp. Someone vamp.
But the vamping here is so okay. First, they introduce Barbara Gordon as the love interest. Now, if you're familiar with Bat lore across the comic books, that's problematic for a lot of different reasons, based on a lot of different timelines and a lot of different specific creepy stories. Specifically, in one of the newer animated films, we don't have to get into that, but. Let's, for the sake of argument, throw that all out the window and say, okay, Barbara Gordon is going to be Bruce Wayne Batman's love interest in the film. Does it need to happen? No, but here we are.
But they did it.
But they did it. But then they didn't do it because he even says, he's like, even if it's with your father figure and your surrogate son and your cool female friend who you're totally platonic with. Like he like literally like calls it out however they call it out that they are not romantically involved, and that's okay. And that's a good message. That's what the message should have been all along. And maybe that got lost somewhere in the cutting room floor. Maybe there's some scenes that they couldn't afford to create or whatever that sort of ease that line. But like they try to have their cake and eat it too with Barbara Gordon. And I think it would have been a much stronger thing if it didn't even take the thing where Batman was like actually interested in her. He was just seeing her as the commissioner is not agreeing with the way Batman does shit.
Right.
And then eventually they could be co-workers and platonic friends. Because straight up, that's a lesson that a lot of young boys should fucking get. And I'm glad it got there eventually, but it felt like it bumbled its way there. And it's not exactly clear. If you blink, you miss it.
Can I, just to play not devil's advocate, because I think I agree with you, but my question is the attitude that Batman holds towards Barbara Gordon, Lego Batman, has towards Barbara Gordon in the movie indicative of his character? Like, is there a little bit of critique in that, or do you think the movie just doesn't know what it's trying to say?
I think it is trying for critique.
Okay.
I think it fails on that because for 3/4 of their relationship, 2 other times in the movie, the Dreamweaver or whatever song moment it was happens.
By Gary Wright, by the way. Gary Wright.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Gary
Don't know
Wright.
who that is. Oh, Gary.
Friend of the podcast.
Gary Wright.
We're putting you in this Batman movie tonight.
Nice.
So and it like does it, and then it kind of forgets that especially when it goes back to the Joker sort of emotional thing, and then there's just one more call at the end, like, oh, by the way, we're woke. So like, and maybe it's called out, maybe it's so glaring to me because every other critique of the Batman story and the problematic things of it, like again, the anger, the fear, the loneliness, all that stuff is played up for laughs and to get you like, oh yeah, this is Batman, and then it kind of comes to a natural roller coaster smooth ride-esque sort of down to where we're going to end up at the end of the movie. And in this one, it just sort of drops it 2/3 through and then has a throwaway line at the end about Barbara Gordon. And so it hits the note, but it's definitely flat, I guess is how I would put that.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I had something to say. George, I don't have anything to say. George, vamp.
Damn. Should I sing? Should I just
Yeah, you haven't sang
No,
it.
I usually save it for before we start recording, just to like,
Get the
His
energy
final
up.
countdown.
Warm up-
He's like, it's
war-
the final
warm up the voice and
countdown.
whatnot. The other the other nice, love the is it reverb?
Yeah, it was
Echo?
reverb. You can cut that out if you.
It's called no. That's going in the whole episode. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
That and your we're gonna turn on the Bane filter.
The other thing that for me like did not really land well, and I think it's because of obviously what's going on now in America is the whole thing about like her graduating from like the Harvard School of Police. Yeah, and I was like, does that mean you are like really excellent at extrajudiciously like murdering civilians in the streets? Is like that's what we're going for? Like it was just like it was like thinking about like the politics of like vigilantism and the association with like Batman and the police in this film, and I was like, oh man. Again, it brought up like all of these reactionary politics that are to some degree endemic in the franchise. So that what I loved about this film again is that there are like these critiques, like right, these moments of critiques of the politics. But again, it's like this kind of question that I constantly have about like, well, can we do something with these characters and with this one character in particular that like eventually gets us to a place where it's like something exceptionally entirely new.
Well, they're all.
Like,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, like again, like why can't we, for example, just have like one of these movies, like just one where at the very end the character's like, I've overcome all my trauma, I don't need to be who I am, let other like kind of forms of justice like do this kind of work, right? Even, and this film almost gets us there.
And even, you know, you could even put it, and I guess maybe the Nolanverse kind of does this, because like Batman, like look, trauma is trauma, and you never actually get over trauma, you learn to live with trauma. And so like I feel like the Nolanverse kind of does it in a weird way in that moment with him and Selena Kyle and Alfred at the thing. Like that's kind of a very Christopher Nolan-esque like resolution. Yeah, I mean,
though there's an argument to be made that sequence at the end of the movie in The Dark Knight Rises is a fantasy, which I only bring up because I think that there is a quality in Nolan's movies to especially at the end of them, to make you go like, did this happen or did this not happen? And I think that like when it comes to these issues of trauma and stuff, like, not that I don't like that he does that, but it does feel a little bit like of a cheat. Like I sometimes wish the endings were a little more concrete. It's what I love about the ending of The Dark Knight, is that it creates two potential ways to interpret what's like, you know, the fact that Gordon is lying and what was actually happening is more like, I think that that's a really great touch. I don't think it works quite as well at the end of Dark Knight Rises.
That's why you also really love the ending of Dunkirk, right? Because you're like, God, what happens? We'll never find out what happened during this war. Oh well, it's like we're just gonna have to guess. It's that Christopher Nolan ambiguity.
Oh, I
don't get it.
Hot take again. My hot takes I'll call out all the time.
Do it.
I'm not a huge fan of Dunkirk.
I really like it, but that's a different
podcast. But let's
podcast.
Tying it back to sort of how Nolan's handling of Batman and his directing sort of, I guess, style or the types of stories he likes to make. And please don't get me wrong, I know intrinsically Dunkirk is a fantastically made film that does not land for me specifically. The way that I think the way that Christopher Nolan does storytelling for me has to sort of land around a large specific concept as opposed to the insane machinations of war. Because and again, one of the series I work on the YouTube channel on Extra Credits is called Extra History, and I was a fan of history, but I was never a buff before I started this job like 2 years ago. And the madness of the actual decision making in war, like we hear a lot about, and as we should, the violence and the death counts and like all the stuff, but the decision making and the politics and all of the stuff that has gone on since the beginning of recorded history is effing nuts. And when you take, I think, Nolan's style and put it into something like war, there's too many unanswered questions in that feeling that you described of like, oh, sort of what, I don't know if this is real or not or what happened. Not that there's, you know, I'm spreading off. The reason I think it works with Batman is because it is a focal point, and we can land on that, and we understand like it, even no matter how complex Batman is, we can very easily, as a human being, wrap ourselves around the complexities of Batman, and therefore the storytelling that he does, I think, works for me.
Well, I think that, to your point, just a really quick thing about Dunkirk, a critique or a real problem I have with Dunkirk is that the Nazis are never referred to as Nazis. They're always just referred to as the enemy. And like, again, I like that movie a lot, but I think there's something to me apolitically problematic and not being like, hey, the people that the British in this case are fighting are fucking Nazi fascists. Like, I wish the movie, it's such a Nolan thing to be like, it's not about that. And it's like, well, it is. Like, history will dictate that that's what that is. You know what I mean? And that really bothers me.
And we should continue to keep reminding pieces of even entertainment and history that is an important message of it. Like, that's a bigger conversation. Germany is not letting people forget it in a good way in their educational system and stuff like that. And other places already started to have, and it's only been, 60-ish something years. 70 years.
Well, this one, for example.
But back to George, your point as well about sort of the handling of police.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dark time to have a gung-ho sort of, again, policing human beings in society is a complex as fuck topic. And because everything is as simple as possible to get the archetypes across in this film, the police are seen as bastions of good. And Barbara Gordon is sort of the coming out and saying, like, calling out the problems with vigilantes and whatnot, yada, yada, yada. But it is hard to rally behind that currently, knowing that police are not a monolithic force of good. There are bad eggs abound, and
what
was that?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no. So like, I mean, and I know, oh God, I hate doing this in a movie about podcast about Lego Batman.
No,
but like,
it's good.
Like, I mean, straight up. Side note: Black Lives Matter. White silence is literally white violence. I hate that rhymes. And also, like, go donate to 1 million or whatever these funds that are the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
Minnesota Freedom Fund,
I donated to that this morning. Like, and I'm sort of waiting to go through on my own social to do stuff. I've just been doing retweets right now because it's complicated, and but like, we all have to make sure that we're speaking up however we are able to, and going back to Lego Batman.
Well, no, it's I mean, it's
this is not a film that deals with that. What was that?
I think that this is exactly the right thing to talk about when it comes to a movie like this. Which is
strange that, well, you know what? Okay. Yes. And despite the fact that it reminds us of how horrible the world can be, it is a good thing that we can take a topic like Lego fucking Batman and actually use it in a context like this, because straight up, 2017, I maybe someone wrote about it. I don't think anyone was talking about this movie in that context. And that's not to say that the things that are happening today weren't happening back then, but like, a painful sore in America has been opened, and now we can look at things that have been created in the past to hopefully see what we like, what we don't like, lessons that can be learned, or ways that we don't want to do things in the future. And also, fuck Clayface, because he's the worst. I don't know. I'm trying to bring it back to something light.
The thing that, and George, you should jump in here, but I feel like one thing that I think that a lot of the films will offer up a small critique or a little, they'll look at Batman and examine and go like, is this what we want? And they're not as good. Some are better than others. I think that there's a point of, we can disagree about this or agree, but the movies aren't great about questioning, like, why are the cops always the good guys in these movies? Like, there's corrupt cops, and that's the reason why Batman has to sort of exist a little bit, depending. Right.
But yeah, no, that's very true.
Like, there's no real critique of like a Law and Order state.
But that's why, like, the Gordons, for example, even though, like, for example, in the Nolan films, obviously there's like a bit more nuance to the Commissioner Gordon character, but he's never portrayed as being representative of a overall corrupt institution. He's just, like, again, the good apple.
He's the quote unquote one good cop.
He's the one good cop, because especially. Did you guys watch Gotham?
A little bit, not much.
I never saw it. No.
It starts real slow, gets real good, and then I fell off around season like 3 or 4. But like, it does handle Gotham and the police department in Gotham very, very well. I feel like for as wackadoo as the plots are in the sort of bad guy a week mentality of that film, it does show the gambit of quality to not quality law enforcement officials, and it does delve into how complicated, if you read it this way, how complicated even the good cops trying to do good lives can be.
Right.
Right.
Which I had not really witnessed with this in a Batman film ever. They are sort of always either they're the good ones, but they just can't get it done, or there's corrupt cops that Batman has to sort of swoop in and become the non-corrupt cop in a weird, like, it's funny. The Nolan films, even though he is, the cops chase him on a tank across rooftops, but it never feels like the vigilantiness of Nolan's Batman it just felt like a more militarized wing of the police.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's always to
100%.
the right, politically speaking, to the cops.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in this film, and there's not a lot of room for this. We could go through why, even from a how much a film can handle and bolt it onto its frame. And there's a lot going on in this film, be it the Lego tie-in, all of the Bat references, all of the different characters, all of the side characters.
Yeah, did the IP stuff drive you guys nuts, just to jump on that? Because I hated, like, when Sauron showed up and Voldemort showed up. I was like, I get why they did it. I just found it so, like, because to me that stuff, and I actually think some of the animation, I had a moment when they were, like, flying away on the bat wing thing, and I felt like I was, like, in the Matrix. Like, I felt like for the first time I was just watching the ones and zeros on the screen as opposed to the movie, and being like, I'm just watching, like, an IP attempt to, I felt the same way in Scoob. There's a scene where one of the characters for Halloween dresses up as a Harry Potter character, and I was just like, because obviously those are both Warner products, and I was just like, ugh. Like, it just feels, I feel like we're 5 years away from Superman being in a movie with Harry Potter, and that, like, kind of makes me sad. And I also think there's just something, like, blatantly commercial about it in a way that this movie somewhat avoids in other ways. Maybe that's naive, but I feel like there is some subversive things about this movie. So when Voldemort and whoever else show up, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me?
I think
Just
why
made
it
me a little
didn't,
crazy.
I can 100% see why it would bother you, and it's funny because I would notice it, I'd be like, and then, like, Agent Smith would show up, and I'd be like, ooh, like, the joy would always bring me back.
Well, Matrix is different.
But like, and then, like, the Gremlins showed up.
The Gremlins
and
are
here's
awesome,
why.
yeah.
Here's why I think it didn't bother me. I think it balanced out for me. There were definitely, like, strong WB properties. All right,
Right.
Sauron and Voldemort specifically. But then you got a lot of classic Universal monster movies. You got sort of the Creature from the Black Lagoon monster in King Kong. You had like real obscure shit, like which sad that Gremlins are kind of obscure now. I just bought the Blu-ray 2 set and I have not watched it yet, but I cannot wait.
That original Gremlins movie. I mean, they both rule. They're so
They
good.
both rule for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And what else was there? There was like, I get that, like, the raptors were supposed to kind of be Jurassic Park, but they didn't ever mention Jurassic. It was just raptors. So, like, I like that they
I think
balanced.
it was the Toronto Raptors. I think it was supposed to be a.
Was it? Yeah.
Is that what they were going for?
They're just like they're dribbling basketballs.
Yeah.
It's very good.
I liked it because, well, and then there's the other intrinsic thing, and again, perfect mash of corporate want and greed and tie into storytelling and world. Lego, as a property, has been consistent in wanting you to explore and combine things that Lego does.
That's
When
a
I
good
was
point.
a kid, I was one of those people that started to build the Lego pirate set, but then, what if I put rocket boosters on this fucking pirate ship?
That's
like,
that's so true.
Yeah, so, like, it is true to the oeuvre of Lego, even though it is a blind cash grab corporate shill event.
You're right.
But it's weird that it's also, like, what a Lego set's supposed to do.
That's true. No, that's a really good point. I think we should have a bell that goes off when we say oeuvre.
Oeuvre, of course.
We should. There should be a
Ding, ding, ding,
counter.
ding, ding.
Put that in, Liam. work on it.
This was great. I think we should wrap it on up unless you guys have any other final closing thoughts.
Great film. Watch it. Also, go watch Gymkata. Not a great film. I just want more people to see it.
I gotta watch Gymkata. That is one thing that's interesting, though, is that I do. I think that, like, I've been watching a fair amount of Sesame Street with my kid.
HBO.
And I do feel it's great. I do watch it. Guys, you guys got to check out Not Too Late with Elmo, his new talk show on the HBO Max. But I do appreciate that like humor, cartoons, kids shows, they're always really for adults. It just feels a little bit like when there's a Gymkata reference in a Lego movie, it just feels like it's almost like a little too on the nose. Like I'm almost like, yeah, I get it. It's for me. I get that this movie is for me, a 37-year-old male. Like I get it. It's my thing. It's just a really interesting side note. But I should watch Gymkata.
You should. And also, film studios, pander to me.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, don't just pander to me. Pander to entirely of the people that are going to be watching your films in different ways. But I'll take the pandering that you give, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
In my direction.
George.
Gymkata watch party. That's what we got to do.
Gymkata. I think it's on Netflix.
Yeah, again, I just had a really fun time watching this film, and I highly recommend it.
We didn't talk about Michael Mann at all, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned Fincher, and I was like, why are you mentioning Fincher? This is like that we're going to do like the man talk.
Oh, yeah, well, they're both mannish, man.
Well, it's just about, like, again, the obsessive kind of masculine dude, right? Who's, again, kind of dealing with this kind of trauma. And he's like a damaged, human being. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's, like, a dude.
You're the Michael Mann now, dog.
Well, that was that. Do we have anything we want to talk about? Next on the show, our final regular episode on Batman, which is actually on Joker, the 2019 motion picture starring Joaquin Phoenix.
Good luck.
You guys did a great episode on it too.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
So in a couple weeks we're gonna have Mark Pagan from the Other Men Need Help podcast to talk about Joker. Then we're gonna wrap up the season, and then season 4 on the 16 films made by Akira Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune.
Hell yeah. Comes out. Please, if you have a chance, ladies and gentlemen, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. OeuvreBusters.com. Podcast is Oeuvre Busters. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on all the places. And to emphasize, we'll include a link to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. This episode's going to come out later than... in some ways, hopefully we won't be talking about this in the same way that we are, but regardless, that's a good place to give money.
They're always doing good work anyway.
They're doing good work. Please support the people doing the work that needs to be done right now, and do the work. Matthew.
Yes, Theo.
Where can we... Let's talk a little bit more about the only movie. Let's talk about the only podcast about movies.
It's confusing because the asterisk is somewhere. Why don't we do it right now? We're doing... Oh, boy. Well, okay, so this will have come out by the time this airs, so people will go back. We are actually going to do The Matrix. Shahir and I have been really wanting to go back and do some comfort food movies. We're also going to be doing Lord of the Rings at some point. But the great part about the Matrix episode, and I can say it's great even though we haven't recorded it yet, is because
Keanu's
due to the fact that Shahir Dowd knows fucking everyone from New Zealand.
Oh, that's right.
We got I'm going to butcher his name, Julian Arahanga, who played APOC in The Matrix.
Oh, nice.
Shahir does an interview with him. I've heard snippets of it. It's fucking great. So look for us, SoundCloud, or we're on Spotify, the only podcast about movies, The Matrix, for some insider stuff on that, because it's amazing. Don't listen to us.
We'll link.
Fast forward to that part.
Anything you send us. Fast forward. Skip the other stuff.
Just quickly, are you guys doing the entire trilogy or just the first one?
Just the first one for now. They made other ones?
I think they did, yeah. I've heard.
No, I actually do want to revisit them. Because
I never saw the third one.
Really? Like,
you never
legitimately?
saw it?
No, I only saw Reloaded, and I was like, and I never saw. But now they're all on Netflix, so maybe I'll watch them.
I want to rewatch them because right now they're the meme, right? Like, oh, like I literally did the dumb joke that everyone's done for years. Oh, about a Matrix movie. I want to rewatch them now with sort of fresh eyes because maybe I was too harsh on them when they. Maybe
I
not.
love the original so much. I love it.
And
I
the
know Kung
Animatrix
Fu.
overall was wonderful.
Really good.
And the video game Enter the Matrix was
Enter the Matrix was a good
legit
game.
cool.
Well, just the bullet time stuff was so neat.
Yeah. But yeah, please check out that episode. Also, check out the good works we're doing over at Extra Credits. I believe at this point we will have wrapped up our history series. Speaking of war, we just did a 5-part series on dividing the Middle East, which was basically the story after World War I and how the great powers fucked everything up there.
Some light stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you like Sharpies on maps, come on down.
Well, we'll include links to all that in there, and I'm actually going to check that out. That sounds really good. George, I forgot to mention our new tagline.
Do you want to mention it?
Yeah. Oeuvre Busters, deep dives by dialectical dudes.
Yeah, the dialecticist and the dudiest.
The most
We're the dudiest. That's us. I was
dialectical dudes.
Okay.
Isolate that.
That's going in the intro from now on. Matt, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah.
Thank you guys, man. It's so much fun talking with you. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm loving the show, and I'm very, very happy to have gotten to be a small part in this building block cornucopia of bat oeuvre that you have created. I really do appreciate it.
I mean, again, if kissing cousins can't get together every once in a while and talk about films, what can we do?
Check out
don't go there. I'm sure it exists, and it's not.
Yeah, I know, Leah.
Let me just check it out.
Maybe maybe we could get like kissingcousins.edu.
It links to Donald Trump's website. That's so weird.
Oh, wow.
I was Liam Billingham.
I was, or maybe still am, George Fragopoulos.
And I am eternally Matthew Krol.
And this was
Oeuvre Busters.
There we go.
Oeuvre Busters. I was born in Oeuvre.
Nailed it.
I didn't bust until I was
I'm gonna
already a
cut.
man.